Every day, we see the darker side of the world around us. We witness how people can hurt others in ways that are hard to understand. It's a sad part of life, but it's something we can't ignore. As someone who dives into the world of crime, I'm here to share the most shocking stories and try to understand what drives people to do such things. I'm Michael, and today, I've got another unreal true crime story for you. It was a cold winter night in Kenton, Massachusetts. Snow covered the streets, and most people were staying warm inside. But inside one small apartment, something wasn't right. Sandra Birchmore, 23 years old and expecting a baby, had been busy planning for the future. Baby clothes were still in their packages, and a checklist for her baby shower sat on the table. But suddenly, she stopped answering calls. She didn't show up for work. Days went by, and no one could reach her. When police arrived to check on her, the apartment was silent. They knocked, no response. As soon as they forced the door open, a terrible smell hit them. What they found inside would leave more questions than answers and reveal a disturbing truth no one expected. Sandra Birchmore entered the world on May 13, 1997, in the quiet town of Stoneham, Massachusetts. Her childhood was shaped by challenges that forced her to grow up quickly. Her mother, Denise, struggled with severe health issues for most of her life, leaving the family in a constant battle against financial strain. Sandra's father was never present. He provided neither emotional nor financial support, making Denise the sole provider. Despite the hardships, Sandra was never alone. Denise leaned on both her longtime partner and her mother, Grace, to help raise her daughter. Grace, in particular, became a steady force in Sandra's life, stepping in as a caregiver whenever Denise's health deteriorated. In a home where survival often took priority over stability, Sandra learned resilience and responsibility at a young age. From an early age, Sandra was drawn to the world of public service. She had a deep respect for authority figures, especially those in uniform, police officers and military personnel. This admiration wasn't random. Many of her maternal relatives had served in law enforcement or the armed forces, which naturally influenced her perspective. Her fascination with police work surfaced when she was just 8 years old, after joining a program called Respect. This initiative encouraged children to develop civic responsibility and communication skills while fostering positive relationships with law enforcement. It was here that Sandra's dream of joining the police force first took shape. Determined to follow this path, she became involved with the Police Explorers program at age 12. This hands-on initiative, founded in the 1970s, provided young people with an introduction to law enforcement, offering training in safety protocols, emergency response, and police procedures. From 2010 to 2016, Sandra dedicated herself to the program, taking every lesson seriously and striving to perfect her skills. Friends and mentors noted her dedication and discipline, recognizing that for Sandra, this wasn't just an extracurricular activity, it was the foundation for her future. But life had other plans. In 2016, when Sandra was 19, tragedy struck. Her mother, Denise, passed away, leaving her devastated. Her aunt, Denise's sister, offered support, but the loss was profound. This period of grief also coincided with the end of her time in the Police Explorers program, a double blow that left her at a crossroads. The career in law enforcement she had once envisioned seemed to slip away as she struggled to regain her footing. After graduating high school, Sandra sought a new direction. She enrolled in college prep courses, intending to pursue a nursing degree. While she shifted her focus, she never truly let go of her admiration for police work and maintained connections with people from the Explorers program. However, the difficulties she had faced from an early age had shaped her in ways she didn't fully realize. The loss of her mother and the lack of a strong paternal figure left her searching for guidance and validation, often from authority figures. This vulnerability would later play a crucial role in her fate. In 2020, seeking a fresh start, Sandra moved to Kenton, a town in Norfolk County, Massachusetts. With a population of about 25,000, Kenton was known for its safe, family-friendly atmosphere, making it an appealing place to settle. She secured a job as a teacher's assistant at Sharon Public School, working closely with students who had special needs. Though this wasn't her ultimate career goal, she saw it as a step toward a better future. Her experience caring for her mother had instilled in her a deep desire to help others, and she hoped to build a career where she could make a difference. Sandra's colleagues saw her as outgoing and friendly, though at times her emotional openness seemed excessive. She often shared personal details with acquaintances, sometimes making others uncomfortable. Despite this, her dedication to her students was evident. She cared deeply and put effort into her role even though she lacked extensive experience. Her warmth and willingness to connect with others made her likable, but it also left her vulnerable to those who might take advantage of her trusting nature. Sandra viewed her time at Sharon Public School as a temporary stop on her way to something bigger. She had plans, dreams of a future filled with purpose. But her eagerness to form connections and her tendency to place trust in others without question would eventually lead her down a dangerous path, one that would have devastating consequences. Sandra Birchmore's path first crossed with Matthew Farwell's in 2010 when she was just 13 years old. At the time, she was an eager participant in the Police Explorers program, an experience that fueled her interest in law enforcement. Matthew, a 27-year-old instructor in the program, quickly became a mentor figure in her life. Initially, their interactions remained within the confines of the program, but as time passed, their communication extended beyond official meetings. By the time Sandra was 15, she began receiving personal messages from Matthew, messages that gradually blurred the lines between mentorship and something far more concerning. As an older, more experienced figure, Matthew carefully cultivated a sense of control over her, using subtle psychological tactics to ensure her dependency. What started as guidance soon shifted into manipulation. Over the years, their relationship took on an increasingly unhealthy dynamic. Matthew's influence over Sandra became more pronounced as he inserted himself into every aspect of her life. He displayed extreme possessiveness, demanding to know her whereabouts at all times, and insisting that she update him on who she was with. His need for control extended beyond words. He eventually used technology to monitor her movements, further tightening his grip on her independence. As his jealousy deepened, so did his volatility. His once affectionate tone would quickly turn hostile, his words laced with veiled threats whenever Sandra attempted to assert herself. Disagreeing with him was not an option. He interpreted any act of defiance as a betrayal. And yet, despite the growing toxicity of their relationship, Sandra remained hopeful that things would improve. She rationalized his behavior, convinced herself that he cared for her, and held onto the belief that the man who once seemed like her protector would not ultimately become her greatest source of fear. By early 2021, Sandra was preparing for a major life change. She was expecting a child. Though life had thrown many hardships her way, she embraced the future with renewed optimism. Her apartment was soon filled with baby items she had carefully picked out, from tiny outfits to essential newborn supplies. Even with financial limitations, she was determined to celebrate the arrival of her baby. She meticulously planned a baby shower, eager to share the milestone with those closest to her. Her excitement was palpable, and those around her noticed how deeply invested she was in becoming a mother. She had even scheduled a newborn photography session, eager to capture the early moments of her child's life. But beneath her outward enthusiasm, there were signs of inner turmoil. Sandra's relationship with Matthew remained a major source of stress. He was still deeply involved in her life, but instead of offering support, he seemed to bring more anxiety than comfort. In the days leading up to the tragedy, Matthew's behavior became more erratic. He visited Sandra's apartment under the guise of helping her prepare for the baby. During one visit, he asked for access to her home, requesting both the key and the door code, claiming it was necessary in case of an emergency. While inside, he seemed particularly focused on her bedroom closet, paying closer attention to the space than seemed natural. Shortly after his visit, Sandra confided in a friend, admitting that Matthew had been acting strangely. Still, she tried to justify his actions, convincing herself that his intentions were rooted in concern. It would be the last time she openly voiced any uncertainty about him. On February 4, 2021, concern grew at Sharon Public School when Sandra failed to show up for work and was unresponsive to calls. A recent snowstorm had caused disruptions in the city, but her absence felt unusual. When several days passed without contact, her co-workers alerted the authorities. Officers were sent to conduct a welfare check at her apartment. When they arrived, they knocked repeatedly and rang the doorbell, but there was no answer. A distinct odor coming from inside raised immediate alarm. Recognizing the unmistakable scent of decomposition, officers forced entry into the apartment. Inside, they found Sandra in her bedroom, hanging from a closet door by a belt. The condition of her body indicated she had been deceased for several days. At first glance, nothing in the scene appeared out of place. The initial police report noted no signs of a struggle. Furniture was undisturbed, and the general disarray in the apartment seemed consistent with her usual living habits. However, when her family was later allowed into the apartment, they noticed details that didn't sit right. A load of freshly washed but still wet laundry was left in the washing machine, suggesting she had been in the middle of her daily routine before her death. On the table, unopened packages of baby essentials sat untouched, having been delivered only days earlier. One of the most unsettling discoveries was a broken necklace found near where she had been found, raising questions about what truly happened in her final moments. According to her family, she wore the necklace constantly, even while sleeping or showering. This discovery cast doubt on the conclusion that she had taken her own life. If she had never willingly removed the necklace, how had it ended up broken near the scene? An even more unsettling inconsistency involved Sandra's phone. She was known to use it throughout the day, rarely ever turning it off. However, records showed that her phone had been powered down an entire day before her death and never turned back on. This raised immediate concerns for her family. It didn't align with her usual behavior, and they suspected it pointed to outside involvement. Determined to uncover the truth, Sandra's loved ones pushed for a more thorough investigation. As more details surfaced, particularly regarding her tumultuous relationship with Matthew Farwell, authorities were forced to reevaluate their initial conclusions. His actions in the days leading up to Sandra's death, including his insistence on gaining access to her apartment and his strange demeanor during his last visit, became critical points of concern. These inconsistencies prompted investigators to dig deeper into what had really happened inside Sandra's home. The last known activities of Sandra Birchmore took place on the evening of February 1st, 2021. Surveillance footage showed her returning home from work at around 5 p.m. Shortly afterward, she stepped outside briefly to collect a package containing baby clothes she had ordered. Later, cameras captured her outside once again, brushing snow off her car. At exactly 5:46 p.m., she re-entered her apartment, marking the last time she was seen alive. Later that night, a significant figure appeared on the building's security cameras, Matthew Farwell. At around 9 p.m., he was recorded entering the lobby and heading up to Sandra's floor. He stayed inside her apartment for approximately 30 minutes before leaving. His attire stood out. Dressed in heavy winter clothing with a mask covering his face, he was well prepared for the cold, but the way he concealed his identity seemed deliberate. The following day, Sandra was uncharacteristically absent from work and stopped responding to messages. The circumstances surrounding her death quickly drew the attention of federal investigators, who launched a full review of the case. Their first concern was the initial crime scene assessment, which seemed superficial and had overlooked crucial details. Investigators soon uncovered evidence that contradicted the assumption that Sandra had taken her own life. She had been actively preparing for the arrival of her baby, ordering supplies, planning a baby shower, and even scheduling professional maternity photos. These plans indicated she was looking forward to the future, not preparing to end her life. Further suspicion arose when forensic experts examined the marks on her body. The injuries did not align with what would typically be expected in a case of self-inflicted harm. When investigators analyzed Matthew's phone records, they recovered deleted messages that painted a disturbing picture of long-term manipulation and coercion. It was also confirmed that Sandra had been pregnant with Matthew's child, a revelation that shifted the entire investigation. At the time of her death, she was in her third month of pregnancy. This fact significantly impacted their already strained relationship. Matthew not only denied responsibility for the baby, but also reacted aggressively, applying both psychological and physical pressure on Sandra. Her pregnancy became a source of escalating conflict. At first, Matthew attempted to distance himself from her, avoiding discussions about the baby. However, as time went on and he recognized the potential consequences, he re-established contact. His sudden change in behavior, reaching out after trying to push her away, became another red flag in the investigation following her death. Investigators also uncovered a crucial piece of information. Matthew was married with children. Sandra had always been aware of his family situation, but in late 2020, she learned that his wife was expecting their third child. This news devastated her, and she confided in a friend about how deeply it affected her. In one of her messages, she mentioned considering telling Matthew's wife about their relationship. However, she ultimately never followed through. When Sandra informed Matthew that she was pregnant, his reaction was hostile. He not only questioned whether he was the father, but made it clear that he wanted nothing to do with the baby. As tensions escalated, his behavior became more erratic, and Sandra grew increasingly anxious. She shared with those close to her that she felt overwhelmed by the pressure and threats she was facing. As investigators combed through their exchanges, they found alarming patterns. Matthew had frequently monitored her whereabouts, exhibited extreme jealousy, and sent threatening messages. Matthew Farwell had used his authority not only to manipulate Sandra, but possibly others as well. What began as a case centered around one young woman soon exposed a pattern of misconduct within the Police Explorers program, where Matthew had served as a mentor. A review of program archives revealed multiple cases of inappropriate relationships between instructors and participants. Sandra had joined the program at 13, and her involvement with Matthew had begun when she was only 15, an ethical violation that, given their significant age difference, also crossed serious legal boundaries. However, Sandra's case was far from an isolated incident. A broader inquiry into the Police Explorers program exposed decades of unchecked misconduct. Established in the 1970s, the program had operated with minimal oversight, allowing mentors to exploit their positions of authority without consequences. Investigators found that other officers, including Matthew's brother, William Farwell, and their superior, Robert Devine, were also implicated in inappropriate behavior. Over 200 cases of misconduct spanning decades were uncovered, many of which had never been reported or properly investigated. Further scrutiny revealed that in January 2021, a police officer had received an anonymous tip about potential misconduct involving Matthew. Instead of filing an official report, he privately warned Matthew, giving him the opportunity to cover his tracks. Immediately afterward, Matthew began deleting messages and making calculated efforts to regain Sandra's trust, moves investigators believed were meant to prevent her from coming forward. What exactly happened inside Sandra's apartment that night remains unknown, but forensic evidence allowed investigators to piece together a likely sequence of events. It was suspected that tensions escalated when Sandra once again brought up her pregnancy. She may have been pressing Matthew for acknowledgement or support, something that, if exposed, could have serious consequences for him. The broken necklace found near her body suggested that a struggle had occurred. Investigators theorized that Matthew used force to subdue Sandra. Her phone, which had been turned off shortly after his arrival, may have been deliberately disabled to prevent her from seeking help. These findings shifted the case from one of suspected suicide to a probable homicide. Sandra's death not only led to Matthew Farwell's arrest in 2024, but also exposed systemic failures within regional law enforcement. The Police Explorers program was permanently shut down, but the damage caused by years of unchecked misconduct continued to affect many lives. The case ignited widespread demands for reform, pushing authorities to reevaluate how mentorship programs involving minors were monitored. The investigation into Sandra's death culminated in August 2024, when Matthew Farwell was officially arrested and charged. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence linking him to the events of that night. This included recovered text messages documenting years of coercion and manipulation, security footage proving he was at Sandra's apartment just before she was last seen alive, and forensic analysis indicating that her injuries were inconsistent with self-inflicted harm. The charges against Matthew extended beyond Sandra's death. He also faced multiple counts related to his inappropriate involvement with her while she was underage. Case records showed that he had used his position in the Police Explorers program to groom and control her from a young age. These revelations shattered his claims of innocence, which he continued to maintain even after his arrest. Despite the damning evidence, holding additional suspects accountable proved to be a significant challenge. Investigators had linked Matthew's brother, William Farwell, and their superior, Robert Devine, to instances of misconduct within the program, but formal charges were never filed against them. Many suspected that reluctance within law enforcement agencies to expose deeper, institutional failures played a role in the lack of further prosecutions. As of early 2025, Matthew Farwell's trial was ongoing. Prosecutors argued that Sandra had been forcibly restrained and that her death had been staged to appear as a suicide. Forensic experts testified that key physical indicators, such as specific hemorrhages in the eyes and facial swelling, were missing, reinforcing the theory that she had been overpowered before her body was positioned inside the closet. If convicted, Matthew faced the most severe possible penalty, including a potential capital sentence. Sandra Birchmore's case was no longer just about one woman's tragedy. It became a symbol of systemic failure, exposing deep-rooted issues in law enforcement oversight. Her family, along with activists and advocates, continued to fight for justice, ensuring that her story would not be forgotten and that her case would drive meaningful change. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.